Hi there. Welcome to our first video on building all of the tabs numbered 1 in the team spreadsheet assignment. I am going to go much slower and give more Excel tips in this one than in the following videos, in which case I will be just producing the results more quickly. I am going to go ahead and turn my camera off so that you won't be distracted by me as we go ahead and look into this first spreadsheet. You notice perhaps that if you need the assistance in getting started, I created and made a copy of my particular spreadsheet that I'm going to be working from, and I put it right here into the general posts area called sample Excel file for assignment 1 team spreadsheet tabs labeled number 1. So if you feel like you need that help, I gave it to you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And as we scroll through to assumptions and online in Europe and Model 1 and Model 2 and OpEx, and then ultimately the income statement, everywhere that is yellow is where we are going to be doing some degree of formula or reference. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing is we think about our revenues. We are going to have two different models, Model 1 and Model 2. Online, Model 1 is going to cost $35,000 and Model 2 is going to cost $100,000. Switch that. Model 1's 100, Model 2's 35. In Europe, Model 1's going to cost $110,000 and in Europe, Model 2 will cost $40,000. Now that we have our pricing structures down, we have demand estimates that we were given from our VP of Sales for online for both, then again, models 1 and 2. And in the online marketplace, we know that we're selling at $100,000 and $35,000. Let's go ahead and first add the formula here in a basic way. Then I'll show you a more advanced way so that it'll make your life easier and faster. So total revenues in quarter 1 is going to be equal to the price times the quantity of Model 1 plus the price times the quantity of Model 2. So we've got $8.5 million. Now we know that the formula will be the same here. It's going to be the price of Model 1 times quantity of Model 1 plus the price of Model 2 times the quantity of Model 2. So because the numbers are all the same, it shouldn't surprise us that it's $8.5 million each quarter. Now, what if I started to pattern recognize that this formula seems to be the exact same? If I was to copy and paste this, look at what happens. Excel moves the references over to now it's saying C3 times E3, which is quantity 1 times quarter 3 quantity. That's not what I want. I want price. Price is sitting back here in B3. So how can I use an Excel function to speed up my work? Watch this. If I go to equals to start off my formula, and then when I highlight this price, if I put dollar signs in front of the B and then in front of the 3, on Excel it's F4, on Mac it's function F4. But if I do that, I can lock my cell reference to that price, but then I allow the cell reference to stay variable at E3 because the next time I'm going to want to use F3 and F4. So I don't want to lock this cell reference, just the price, because the price stays fixed. So same thing, if I go to Model 2 and then I lock that reference and I multiply by the quantity sold in quarter 3, now I can see I have a much bigger sales number. And then watch when I copy and paste, it kept that reference to B3 and it kept that reference to B4, but it updated the quantities to be in column F, where previously they were in column E. So that's using dollar signs to set up fixed references in Excel so that you start getting quicker on your ability to build out. So as we think then about what life is like in Europe, let me go ahead and rebuild those formulas. Equals, highlight our first price, put our dollar signs, multiplied by then the quantity in quarter one plus the second price, dollar signs, multiplied by the quantity in quarter one. And then when I copy and paste that across, and anytime I do a fixed reference, I always like to go back and double check at the end just to make sure it makes sense. So in quarter four, $110,000 times 10 vehicles, model 2, $40,000 times 150. And so if I just eyeball it, it looks like we've got about 32 million coming from our European market, and we've got another 37 million coming from our online market. So that tells me that my revenues should be somewhere around 70 million. So I'll keep that in the back of my head and see if it works later. Okay, now we have to think about all of our production. Similarly, now I have to figure out in model one how much quantity will be sold in quarter one. So online in quarter one, we sell 15 of model one, plus in Europe, we sell 15 of model one. Again, because I made such a nice little spreadsheet where everything lined up well, let's see what this one did when I copied and paste. It says take online F3 plus Europe F3. So let's see what's in online F3. Aha, that's my quarter four quantity. And then in Europe, F3 is also my quarter four quantity. So I was able to quickly copy and paste to give myself now references back to the fact that Model 1 has 30, 30, 40, and 20 units expected to be sold by quarter next year. All right, how are we going to go ahead and then do our calculations? We're going to use some fixed referencing again. Here's the way we're going to do it. Equals, I always have one engine. I always pay $37,500 for that. So I'm going to put my dollar signs around both. But my amount of production will vary based off the quarter. So when I look, for example, in quarter four, I'm only making 20 cars. Each has one engine, but I pay $37,000 and change for each. Let's do the same thing with tires. I have 4 tires, $500 each. I make 30 cars in quarter one. So my tire costs, if I were to look in quarter four again, I have approximately, well, not approximately, I have $2,000 per car that I'm paying in tires times 20 cars should be not 2020. Look at, I have a bad formula. Aha, look at what I did. I did plus C3. That's not what I meant the formula to be. It was supposed to be multiplied by C3. My mistake. That makes much more sense, doesn't it? 4 tires, $500 each, $2,000 per car, 20 cars, $40,000. All right, caught that error before it got too far. All right, how about seats? We have 4 seats. We pay $2,000 per seat. Those are both fixed references. The quantity is a variable reference. So for example, if I'm paying $8,000 in seats and I'm making 30, shouldn't surprise you that I then have $240,000 worth of seat costs in quarter four. Down here then, our total materials are going to be just the sums of all of those costs from engines to tires to seats to electronics to raw materials. So I can copy and paste my sum over into my subsequent columns. And then these out here are also just sums of the previous so that I can go ahead and copy and paste all of my formulas there because I'm just totaling up the work that I did above. I can take my yellows off, and now I have a good estimate for Model 1's materials costs. All right. How about when we pay employees? When we pay employees, employees get a $22 wage, but we also pay benefits at a rate of 30%. So the total cost of an employee is $22 plus their $22 rate multiplied by their benefit cost of 30%, so that the compensation cost on an hourly basis per employee is really $28.60 rather than $22 because we have to pay for healthcare benefits and the like. All right, what about our testing employees? Same basic idea. We have a 27-hour rate to start with, but to that 27-hour rate, we have to add an additional 30% in cost for benefits. So our testing employees are going to cost us $35.10 each per hour. All right, so how much will we pay in total labor per quarter for employing 75 employees as assemblers and 10 employees as testers? Here's the formula for this. Our labor is going to be, we have 75 employees. They make $28.60 in total compensation cost per hour, and they work 500 hours per year. Then I have 10 employees who pay them $35.10 equivalent per hour in compensation and benefits. And then I ask them to work 500 hours per year. And so my total labor costs are 1.2 million for Q1. And then because I laid out my formula and my spreadsheet similarly, this last year should show me 75 employees, $28.60 per hour, 500 hours, etc. And we didn't vary our labor costs in here, but as we showed in class the other day, when we do change our employee headcount, it will automatically change our total costs. So we can go ahead and get rid of this here. And then our total production costs per quarter are going to be the materials plus the labor. Copy and paste that over. And now from here, we can sum up these totals on the side, just like we did up above. So we can take our quarters and summate them into annual estimates. And then the last thing we try to calculate so that we can compare it quickly to price would be something like our total cost of goods per vehicle. So if our total cost of goods for production is 2.7 million in the first quarter, and we're making 30 vehicles, that suggests for us that our cost of goods per vehicle is about $90,000. We would want to then go back and compare something like that to our price. And we see at least our price is going to cover our cost of goods and leave a little bit of margin for our operating expenses. So let's go ahead and take a look at that across the quarters. And as you can imagine, once we get up here into the fourth quarter where we still have 75 employees, but only making 20 cars versus the 30 previous, our cost of goods per vehicle gets significantly higher. Let's move on to Model 2. Take a sip of coffee here real quick. And let's replicate that process. I could just copy and paste a lot of what I did before, but for your edification, I'll redo it again. So Model 2 we're on, so equals online. We sell 200 online in Q1. And in Europe, we sell 150. So we have our demand estimates coming from our marketing department such that, sorry, I'm having Control C, enter, there we go. Double check to make our formula certain that it works. Online F4 plus Europe F4. Online F4 Model 2 Q4 200, great. Europe F4 Q4 Model 2 150, great. I should expect to see 350 in that cell. Excellent. This time, I'm going to redo these formulas coming down the column and then just copy and paste them over since they're the same structure. Ready? I've got 1 engine per car, doesn't change, 5,000 per engine, doesn't change, multiplied by the 350. I have 4 tires per car, doesn't change, multiplied by $50 per car, doesn't change, multiplied by the 350 in Q1, which will change. Last in this, I have seats at 4, doesn't change, multiplied by my cost, doesn't change, multiplied by then the 350 quantity, which will change. And now that I have these all set up, I should be able to, if I just press the buttons correct, copy and paste them over. I like to double check. So 4 times 1 is $4,000 in tires times 350. I should expect to see 1.4 million here. Good. Let's sum these up so that we can take some looks at our total annual totals. And the same down here for our total materials costs. We'll go ahead and sum up our engines, tires, seats, electronics, and raw materials. We can copy and paste those over. Add our sum here and get rid of our yellows and see if we can move down below. All right, the process down here will be similar. Our wage is $22, plus we need to gross that wage up by 30%. Now, let me see if this will work. What if I copy and paste this down here? I have equals the rate times the rate plus 30%. Aha, because I laid these out exactly the same with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. It allows me to go ahead and just structurally copy and paste that below so that I don't have to replicate those formulas again. Total labor, I've got 75 employees. They cost me $28.60 an hour, and they work 500 hours. Those are the assemblers. Plus I have 10 testers making me pay $35.10 per quarter or per hour, multiplied by the 500 hours they work. And now I've got my cost estimates there. We can sum these up. And then our total production again is materials plus labor. And then sum these things up, get rid of the yellows. And now let's do that same quick analysis. What if in Q1 I pay $4.53 million in total production costs? Oh, what did I press there? Divided by, we have to find our total production of $350 in Q1. So it cost me $12,000 to sell a car that I'm making the market pay me $35,000 for. So much better cost of goods margin for me there. So let's copy and paste that and just take a look and make sure that everything looks grand. All right, the OpEx page is going to be a little bit simpler for us because it's laid out in a way that first starts with saying, how much do we expect to pay our chief executive officer? That chief executive officer makes $50,000 per quarter plus $100,000 in a bonus. So if we do the head math, that's 200 plus 100 should be $300,000 this year. Let's see then, because this spreadsheet's laid out the same, what if we did that for the CFO? $45,000 per quarter for 4 quarters, plus a projected bonus of $75,000 yields me $255,000. So if we copy and paste this correctly, and notice I'm always putting it at the line of their title. Let's see if at the end, the chief people officer makes 30 times 4, 120, plus another 35. I would expect to see 155. Excellent. So what is the sum of everything that I am paying for my entire management staff? Looks like its annual cost to me, if I type it in right, let's do it like this. If I type it in right, it looks like $1.3 million is the total compensation cost for me to have all of my executives on staff. Let me take the yellows off of there. All right. How about when we get to our departments then? For our departments, we have an average comp, including benefits, per head count, multiplied by our number of head count. So in this one, we're going to have $50,000 per our 2.5 people in Q1. And then we have $50,000 per our 2.5 people in Q2. And we have $50,000 per our 2.5 people in Q3. And finally, $50,000 per our 2.5 employees in quarter number 4. Now notice I put that down at the average comp and benefits line because I like the way that all the numbers looked when they were together. So let's do the same thing. Let's put the dollars with the dollars and see if we can't copy and paste and see if when we get to the end, if it doesn't make sense. So in the end, we're now talking about the HR staff. Because we built our formulas in our spreadsheet so well to begin with, I've got 2 employees making 40 grand each. That's 80. 80 times 4, I should expect to see 320. Beautiful. So how much does it cost me to have all the departments? That's an additional $4 million worth of labor that I can put in there. And then if I wanted to total up this individual quarter, it would be 2 employees, and 2.5 times 50 grand plus 2 employees times 125. Notice I made the finance people the highest paid people. Manufacturing, we just got 1. IT, seems like there's always a ton of those folks around. I got 7 people in marketing because sales are the most important part of cash flow generation. And then finally, I've got my support staff in HR. And if we did this right, this 1165 number should average to itself, and then 4.660 is absolutely my annual total cost of the departments. Okay, this part down here should be nice and simple because we've asked our finance person to build us a budget that just says, how much will I pay each quarter for travel and entertainment? So on an annual basis, that looks like 40. Additionally, I have rents to be paid on my facilities. I pay a premium on insurance every quarter. I have a contract to maintain our equipment in manufacturing. Then each of my executives has a big budget. Notice the marketing person's budget is the biggest since that person will generate revenues for us. So that all of my overhead costs are looking like $2.26 million. Just let's make sure that in this case, that all seems to make sense. We copy and paste that across. There's that 2.26 million. That all equals out because these are just plain sums above. And now it looks like I've got good operating costs. And now I have successfully thought of, here are the drivers of my revenues, what I sell in online in Europe. Here are the drivers of my cost of goods, materials and labor. Here are the costs of running my organization, from management to departments down to administration. So let's pull it all together and see whether or not this company is going to be profitable. So revenues for Q1 are going to be equal to the 8.5 million that we get in Q1 from online, plus the 7.6 million that we get in Europe. Put those together. Because I made my spreadsheet so lovely, I should be able to copy and paste across. And when I check down here, and we said before, keep a number in mind, it should be around 70 million, and it is, so I'm happy there. My cost of goods then is going to be equal to, in Q1, my total production costs for Model 1, plus, in Q1, my total production costs for Model 2. Gross profit is equal to revenues minus cost of goods. It tells us we have 8.9-ish million left after we've paid for the vehicle from what was in our original revenue pool. Our operating expenses in Q1 then is going to be my management costs plus my departmental costs plus my administrative expenses, all for that quarter. And so my support costs are an additional 1.98 million. EBITDA is equal to gross profit minus operating expenses. Additionally, we have equipment that depreciates, which, if I'm not mistaken, way back in the assumptions page, we had it laid out per quarter that will have $1 million per quarter in depreciation. EBIT is equal to EBITDA minus depreciation. Interest expense is going to be calculated as being equal to, off my assumptions page, I'm carrying $150,000 in long-term debt, multiplied by I pay a quarterly interest rate. Sorry, I hit the wrong button there. Let's try that again. I have $150 million in long-term debt, multiplied by a 1.5% interest rate per quarter. So my interest costs are going to be $2.2 million in change. My EBIT minus my interest expense will give me my EBT. Taxes are going to be levied against my EBT. So my EBT, earnings before tax, multiplied then by the assumption that I make of paying tax at 35%. Tells me my tax bill at the end of quarter one should be $1.284 million. And then my earnings is simply equal to my earnings before tax, subtract away my tax. Because I did such a nice job structuring this, I should now be able to copy and paste everything across and take a look. For example, then, my revenues, online F5, Europe F5. Online F5, Europe F5. Great. How about my cost of goods? Production 1, F28. Production 2, F28. Production 1. I see. Whereas, does it say F28, quarter 4? Production 2, F28. Great. So it looks like I have good solid formulas, and I know that I did my first ones right, so if I copied and pasted them across, they should all be the same. Let's sum these things up until we get ourselves into this final annual total. Delete that, make these look just like this. Take off all my yellows, save it, and cross my fingers. I'm looking for $11.598 million as my answer to this first exercise. So if I come into Teams and I look into our files and I look then into my assignment 1 that I completed for you as a reference and solution set, and I come down all the way into what is page 8, I've got, let's see, I see 11 million. I see 11,207. I got a small error somewhere. I'm off by a couple of $100,000. Well, 2.386, that looks right. Let's see here. 2.5. We got a problem in quarter 2 that needs to be fixed. I'm already seeing. And then what about here? 4.689 and 1.889. All right, so I made a mistake somewhere in my assumptions that I have to double check and fix. However, what I showed you in terms of the formula build, I'm not going to re-record because I think I've been recording this thing for at least 30 some minutes or so. So hopefully this will allow you to walk alongside of me and build the same spreadsheet that will eventually give you this answer. If I made a substantive mistake, I will let you know and go back and fix that. But otherwise, I hope this helps, and I look forward to seeing the work that you can produce